Welcome, fans of the Justice League universe. This is our special Wonder Woman commentary episode. My name is Sam.
And I am Alessandro.
My name is Rebecca Johnson.
And my name is Sydney.
And so we're going to be getting Wonder Woman all queued up. If you want to watch along with us, you're going to want to pause it right after the WB logo disappears. So go ahead and watch the FBI warnings and the stuff at the beginning. The WB logo will come up. And then right when that WB logo disappears to a black screen, pause it. You'll be at the 17-second mark. If you get there, that's when we will start it together in just a minute. But first, I wanted to ask everybody, what was your initial opinion of the film when you saw it? And then where has your opinion of the film landed now that we're a few months later?
Well, walking out of the theater, I thought the movie was amazing. Not quite as good as Batman v Superman, but really solid, well-done movie. Now I still pretty much feel the same way. I'll be honest with you, I haven't really seen it much since my original viewing of it, but I've seen scenes here and there, and especially doing our analysis, it seems to really hold up. I'm definitely seeing a lot more now than when I originally watched it, and you know, in my initial viewing, I had already seen tons of stuff, so yeah, I think it's really good.
Cool. Rebecca?
Yeah, I had some complicated feelings about this movie when I first saw it because I didn't love it when I walked out of the theater. I liked it. It was fine, but I didn't love it the first time I saw it. And I think part of it was because there were some jokes that were a little uncomfortable for me, and it didn't seem like it had as much depth as I was hoping for, but it took me a couple of viewings. So about the third viewing, I finally got to the point where I was able to enjoy myself a little more. I think the first time I was hung up on it getting, Rotten Tomatoes had this huge score for it.
Yeah.
And a high score. And so I had gotten so hung up on that when I went into the theater that it took me 3 viewings to really just enjoy it for what it was and kind of enjoy the film. And I've noticed that in going through the analysis for JLU podcast that I have a much deeper appreciation for the film than I did after that first viewing. So I think that's really enriched my love for this movie.
Yeah, that's part of why I love doing the analysis is you just see things. You see things that maybe you noticed initially, but you just kind of get a full appreciation of them. Or through the analysis, you notice new things that you even missed when you saw it first couple times. Sydney, what was your initial impression like?
I think my opinion of the movie is the same now as it was then, but like Rebecca says, I sort of have a better appreciation for it. I didn't let the Rotten Tomatoes score affect my opinion. I think after, the whole experience with Batman v Superman, I was just so beyond that. But I was in a great theater. I remember these 3 teenage girls in front of me who were just clasping hands and screaming and getting so excited about everything. So, my view was, I don't think it's quite as complex as Batman v Superman, but I don't really expect most movies to be as complex as Batman v Superman. And
right.
I think anything that I thought was frivolous in this film, looking at it a second time, I realized, there is a meaning to this. Patty was trying to tell us something. So
yeah. For me, I can't really judge movies against Batman v Superman because that one for me is like way up pretty high. I realize it's not fair, and I have to remind myself that when I watch other movies now.
Yes,
but
it's so hard.
yeah, Wonder Woman. When I saw it, I got to see it early, and when I walked out of it, I just felt pretty good about it. I enjoyed it. I thought it was really solid, like Alex said, and I also had good feelings because I could tell when I saw the movie that the general audience was going to like it. And so I kind of like breathed a sigh of relief that, hey, this one's not going to be that controversial. And I think most people are going to like it. And that is basically what's turned out to be the case. So I kind of felt good about that sort of just contextual aspect of it. As I saw it more times, I got a little bit more appreciation out of it. But like you, my opinion didn't change a ton. I basically just saw a little bit more of the nuance. I connected a few more of the dots, but how I'm seeing the movie now after several viewings is fairly similar to how I saw it the first time. And I think that's part of why it appeals to general audiences, because when you watch it once, I think most people pick up the general flow and the themes and stuff. So that's one of its strengths, is that it's a little bit easier to grasp. the big ideas that are going on. But let's actually get into the movie. So hopefully you have it queued up right after the WB disappears at the 17-second mark. So let's all start it together. We're going to do 1, 2, 3, then hit play. So let's do that now. 1, 2, 3, play.
Go.
So we've got the black screen and the Rat Pack logo coming on up. So one disappointment I had in the movie, it's very minor, but I was disappointed that it was like a very standard WB logo that was just before this. I like the WB logos when they're like integrated into the world, but this animated stuff is awesome.
I love the DC logo.
Were you all surprised to see this new animated character logo that popped up? Because I was. I didn't expect that.
I was totally surprised. Yeah, I had no idea that was coming. It was awesome.
Yeah, everyone was talking about Green Lantern.
Everybody's hoping for some Green Lantern. So the Earth. So this approach shot is pretty cool. Just she's talking about this world and this place, and then I like the idea of just getting closer and closer to her. It's a nice, I think, opening to the movie.
Yeah, sort of like a God's eye view approach.
Oh,
and
yeah,
makes sense because, you know.
And then we see a demigod right there.
Gods.
Yeah. And here we have, the connection. So this is after BVS, and she's an antiques dealer. And a lot of people, like in BVS, they just thought that she like was walking around museums, but they didn't realize in BVS that she's an antiques dealer. Like she works as her profession with that kind of stuff. So now hopefully people are getting it.
Yeah, I like that they set that up in BVS.
That's a really excellent job for her to have, considering her history. Did she ever do that in the comics? I know she was an army nurse in Golden Age comics, but what's her normal profession these days?
I don't remember her having this job, although I haven't read like all the Wonder Woman comics, but I do like this choice, like you said, because it just, like, look at these artifacts that are around her and all this stuff behind her, and it gives us the sense that she's sort of out of time, or like she's for all time, which is fitting.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and she's surrounded by swords and shields and things that Wonder Woman would be into.
Yeah. So this photo is awesome. So I love things that connect to BVS because I have such positive feelings about that movie, but this is cool. And the relationship is still developing between her and Bruce, which I think will be a really big aspect of Justice League.
Yeah, the two of them are going to be the leaders, bringing everyone together.
I found it interesting that the photo seemed to be in the glass and not on paper.
It's an original print. I mean, I don't know much about those old cameras, but I don't think it would be normal film.
So this little girl actress won a lot of people's hearts, I think. Just everybody seemed to think she's really cute. She did a good job. She's very memorable in her performance.
She was cute.
Even just the way she was running seems very likable. Like, this is cool.
Yeah. No, this I loved. Seeing the Amazons train. I mean, it, like when the woman leans down and grabs the shield, when they do a flip in midair and throw the sword. Not only does it just look cool, it feels very unique. It's not something that I just see in every single action movie.
Yeah, they definitely have a different fighting style. And what I'm really impressed with these shots of the Amazon's training is that a lot of it is green screen. I mean, a lot of it's CGI and not real, but it looks pretty good. I mean, it looks fairly realistic.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I think they did a good job with the, like, kind of the city part where they did go on location, but they enhanced it with green screen. Like, they extended the set a bit with green screen, and it's integrated really well, I think.
Yeah, some of the location shots would be beautiful anyway, but they amplified it.
I also like this training scene because it sets up the beach battle later. So, like, we see them training, but we know as movie watchers that, oh, they're going to definitely have a battle scene in a few, within a few minutes.
Exactly. I still haven't watched all the bonus features for that, but a lot of the green screen, I think, was doing it in layers, so they were only filming a few women at a time.
Yeah, they definitely did that. I read about that in the art and making of the film book, too. It's pretty cool. I actually haven't watched all the bonus features yet. I've been busy, but I need to do that. Yeah, there's the pretty, goes way back. Like, it has a lot of depth to it. in just depth of field behind them.
Yeah, just beautiful backgrounds.
Well, Themyscira should look beautiful. It's an island of paradise. It should look like paradise, and I think they did a good job of, and it not only making it feel like it's paradise, but it feels real. It feels lived in, feels ancient. So I think they really captured the essence of Themyscira.
Yeah, there's so much greenery over everything.
And that makes me think about connecting it to Man of Steel. So like Man of Steel opens up with several minutes, 15, 20 minutes of Krypton. And this movie has basically at the beginning, 15, 20 minutes of Themyscira, or half an hour.
True, yeah.
And to me, the contrast is pretty strong, right? Krypton, it's this world. There's men that are kind of at the head of it, as we see. And it's crumbling, literally. And this one is women, and it's beautiful. It's like a paradise.
Well, yeah, all the green and trees mixed in with the buildings. I mean, not only does it make it look ancient and lived in, but that shows that the Amazons are at peace with their environment.
I like how the warm fire colors tie into the picture. When she opens it, it also has the warm kind of light fire colors on the side, the oranges and kind of yellows.
It's funny how Hippolytus says war is not something to look for or forward to. I forget the exact wording, but it's kind of reflects her feeling about how Diana wants to go after Ares. And it's like, you shouldn't want to go face Ares.
Mm-hmm.
We know her mom doesn't want her to go. I mean, that's why all the secrecy. She's trying to make sure that going after Ares is the last thing she wants to do, but you can't. Parents only have so much control over their children.
So you just made me think of a whole new kind of interpretation of this bedtime story then. So Hippolyta is basically reading this story to try to scare Diana away from this stuff. Mm-hmm. But when you look at little Diana's face, she's like intrigued and drawn into it. So it has like the reverse effect.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Well, at one point when she sees Ares, she does kind of lean back because it kind of freaks her out. But yeah, I think it intrigues her to learn about the world of man.
Well, she's drawn by the adventure of it. She hasn't experienced war firsthand, so she doesn't have any of the negative associations. She just thinks it's an adventure. It's a sacred duty.
Well, yeah, she's a little girl who wants to be an Amazon.
Well, she sees everyone training, and it's sort of like, they glorify it by making their training like an actual part of their everyday lives. So it's almost like, she's being bred to sort of want that because she wants to be like everyone else.
Yeah, and her mom's trying to keep her from that.
Now, this was at my second or third viewing when I actually caught the fact that Zeus dies. Like the first time I watched it, I thought that the other gods died, but then Zeus and Ares were left. But then my second or third viewing, I noticed like, oh wait, it was actually with Zeus's like dying breath that he struck him down, or made, right here, Zeus did this, but it's like on his way to dying. So that was like, you have to listen pretty closely.
That happened to me too.
Yeah. There it is with his dying breath. That's like, I missed that the first time I watched it.
Yeah.
So do we think that the rest of the gods are still alive?
They could come back if the writers wanted them to come back. They could find a way to have some of them come back, I think.
Yeah.
Well, yeah, I mean, arguably, if they are gods, then they shouldn't be able to die. But then we get into the whole question of, well, are they real gods in this universe, or do they just seem like gods? Because are we to believe that Zeus actually created man?
Oh, yeah, that's actually something I wonder about.
I like the idea of the Greek gods having died and the Justice League become the new gods, or that you have eventually, I guess, Apocalypse and the new gods and that stuff. But in the painting that we see with the story time, it sort of looks like, with all the gods that are in the book, it sort of looks like the Justice League a little bit, because I think you have like Poseidon up there, who sort of looks like Aquaman. So I kind of like the idea of the Justice League being, quote, the new gods.
I like that too.
Come in place of them.
Yeah, it's nice.
Yeah, I believe that's the association they're trying to build in our minds.
Mm.
It's a pity the sword isn't actually the god killer. It's very beautiful.
Yeah. And Hippolyta is really like walking a fine line here again, because like she's saying like, I hope this never has to be used. And yet they put it in this, beautiful like display, and like they're glorifying the objects of war. But then Hippolyta is also trying to say like, I don't really want war, but it's kind of mixed messages for a little girl.
Well, it's like Antiope's going to say soon here. It's basically like denying Diana her true self or true nature.
Mm-hmm.
Now, there's nothing Hippolyta can do to stop her from wanting to be a hero, from wanting to become a warrior.
Mm-hmm.
And especially, like you said, when she's surrounded by warrior women and the sword and all these stories that her mother's told her.
Yeah, and so this tension of parenting, I think, might be part of why this movie resonated with so many people, because as a mother, Hippolyta wants to protect her daughter so much, but then, like you said, that's kind of getting in the way of Diana's true potential. And I think that's like a tension that a lot of parents have, right? Like, yeah, your child has this potential or destiny or whatever you might want to call it. But then that involves risks, or it involves letting them go. And that's like the tension of a parent.
Mm-hmm.
I didn't notice that Antiope has a scar on her arm. That's a nice little addition to the character.
Mm-hmm.
So the Amazons can be injured, but they're immortal, but they can be injured.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Well, and they can be killed, as we see later on with Antiope as well.
Mm-hmm. Actually, I love how this, Hippolyta being protective of Diana. This is a theme we've already seen in Man of Steel, right? With Clark's parents. They want him to reach his full potential, but they're not really sure how that will happen, and they're concerned about his well-being. It's a theme that I can see carrying forward into the future as well, with like maybe Barry and his father, and Victor and his father. It's just yet another thing that seems to connect all these characters.
But it seems that Hippolyta doesn't want Diana to reach her full potential, because at that point, Ares would be able to find her more easily.
No, true. But I'm saying, she's concerned for her. But I mean, she's letting her train now. But I was just saying that the relationships between these characters and their parents seems to be very important.
Mm-hmm.
Right.
And I really like it about the DCEU overall that when these heroes are stepping into their role as heroes, like especially Superman and Wonder Woman, the DCEU lets us see loved ones who have to watch their loved one, go into danger and become a hero. So it's Jonathan Kent, Martha Kent, and then it's Lois Lane. They have this close, relationship and love for Clark, and then they have to see him go into harm's way and eventually, sacrifice himself. And here it's Hippolyta, like she's watching her daughter become so amazing like this. And so Hippolyta knows that, wow, that's going to eventually lead to something dangerous. And to me, it's great for the universe to not just see the hero, but to actually see the people that love the hero. And then you can have all this depth of the relationships.
Mm-hmm.
And this scene sort of mimics when she was younger, and Antiope told her that she doubted her. So that's sort of just what happened here.
Yep. So Diana learned that lesson about believing in herself, but now she learned a new lesson of don't let your guard down.
Boom.
There's the bracelet blast. Big moment. 14 minutes in is the bracelet blast.
I love that move so much. It's pretty unique to the film version so far. But I think it was a good call, because it's another thing to separate her from, say Superman, who she shares a lot in common with powers-wise in the comics.
Yeah, I really like it because it gives those gauntlets a purpose. It's not just she has bracelets on. The gauntlets actually do something, and it gives her another ability to go along with her other powers.
Right. Oh, but I don't, and this is mostly maybe just a theory of mine, I don't think it's entirely the gauntlets. I have a theory, maybe not well developed, that like her swords and shields that she uses, both in this and in Batman v Superman, I think a lot of their durability and power comes from her. I mean, the powers are hers. You know, she's using a new sword against Doomsday than the one that's destroyed here. So I think it's not the weapons themselves.
Visually, it seems like the actual items themselves are magical, but it's possible that only, you know, a god can wield them. So right. So
yeah,
if
only
another
Diana
Amazon
can
were to
use
wear
them that
them,
way.
they wouldn't
Yeah.
necessarily work for them. But because she's part god, she can tap into that power, that magic.
Right. Beautiful guys.
So I just want to mark that Diana looked up like she does. That was the first time she looks up toward the sky, and then that dive was just amazing. I can't, like, they used a digital double to do that, but it just turned out so well. It's awesome. Steve Trevor. I think this is a cool, like, new interpretation to bring Steve Trevor in. I liked it.
It's such a beautiful way of showing it.
And there's her silhouette that comes through. That's pretty cool.
Yeah, all these underwater shots are so good looking. Like, they're so great.
I like there with the bubbles giving the real sense that they are going down and down.
It's unlikely that another Amazon would have fished him out. So he was lucky that she found him.
Yeah, that's true.
Like they just let him die.
They might have.
Probably.
Maybe, yeah.
This is just a cool visual, like, you know, visual storytelling here, and very memorable for the pulling out, you know, from the island.
And then it's a big contrast visually, the misty darkness versus the clear daylight.
And that's going to continue throughout the film, you know, like when they reach London and Diana says, it's hideous.
So now he sees through the mirage, and then as soon as he crosses the barrier, everything becomes clearer. So he could still see into that island, you know, paradise. So it's sort of like, you know, camouflaging the island, not necessarily making it completely invisible.
Yeah, that's how I took it too.
But the timing is such that I kind of feel like maybe they're only able to get to the island because I guess like the barrier was broken. That kind of seems to be the theory that, you know, Diana's awakening allowed this to happen.
Well, keep in mind that now, you know, once
Unless I'm
the
misinterpreting.
20th century came around, technology grew exponentially, and then they had, you know, motorboats. So it was easier to navigate the world. So prior to then, it was unlikely that anyone would discover the island.
So you think that maybe the island's discovery was inevitable?
I mean, I tend to think it could be either explanation, but I tend to think that it just was never discovered. Not necessarily that her power being unleashed, you know, sort of broke the barrier.
It could go either way. I mean, it's a magic island. I don't know if you'd be able to see it on, you know, GPS in the 21st century or not, but
It's one of those questions that doesn't really need to be answered.
yeah.
So I love the kinetic energy here to start off this action scene. So the yelling and then the arrows flying and then Diana and Steve running, and it just like visually it picks up the energy and gets us ready for this action scene. And then speaking of the Amazons having like a really unique style and movement and fighting, I mean, I had never seen anything like this before. It's awesome.
Yeah, they're not just great warriors. They're some of the greatest warriors who ever lived, and this really proves that.
And I like that it's an army of men versus an army of women. I like that contrast as well.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and the weapons are very different.
Also, swords and bow and arrows versus guns, and they still win. I mean, they take some losses, but I always think that's incredible and just shows how powerful and well trained they are.
Yeah.
And it looks completely plausible the way they do it too.
Yep. It's also great that Antiope's right up front too.
Yeah.
And they ride in without any fear.
Mm-hmm.
Which I think also is in part that they are not familiar with their weapons of man.
What was it? Artemis there, she kicks up sand in their face so their weapons are useless anyway, so they can't see.
It's really smart.
Mm-hmm. Oh, I love that dive from Robin Wright.
Yeah, Robin Wright just to me was just about perfect in this movie. I don't have any complaints about her or no critiques.
I love what was it? On Twitter, Twitter user Joy, she was talking about. She talks a lot about Robin Wright's, I guess, wrinkles, like her neck veins, but it's incredible because she's an older woman. I don't think they did anything to go out of their way to make her more beautiful. She's just this, fierce older lady, and I feel like that's something you don't see in movies very often.
Mm-hmm. And yeah.
They focus on their strength more than their looks.
Yeah. And then and her fluidity of motion, right? Like, look how, like, that launch is great. And then the posture she has going, it's awesome.
Yeah.
Great shot.
I also just, I like movies where, instead of just having a generic action scene, you have these memorable moments where everybody who saw this movie remembers Antiope flying over like that. Or, remembers the Amazon swinging down. I just really appreciate movies where it's like, yeah, that was such a memorable way to do the scene. It wasn't just a pedestrian way of doing the scene.
Indeed. I think Diana's the tiara.
Mm-hmm.
I didn't know that it was Antiope's before seeing this movie, and when Hippolyta says that when she gives it to her, that just broke my heart. I thought that was incredible, and it sealed Antiope's sacrifice in my mind.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I thought that was a really nice connection between the characters, and it pays off really well later.
Yeah, every part of Wonder Woman's costume has a purpose to it. Like, I'm even noticing, I saw this movie 6 times in the theater, and I'm just now realizing that the Amazons, when they're battling, they have gauntlets. Like, each of them have gauntlets on.
Mm-hmm.
So that's just part of their attire.
Mm-hmm.
This was in our analysis, but I still think it's pretty cool with the outfit that Diana has on right now. It spirals around her, just like the Godkiller sword. Like the apparatus that's holding the Godkiller sword spirals around. So it's like a little bit of a visual hint that Diana's actually the Godkiller.
And like the spirals here.
Another good set on Themyscira. I think it was great how they executed the lasso. Like, the look of it is really good. I like the way that they visualized the powers. I just thought it was really well done.
I love Pine's performance here too.
I mean, I'm basically watching this again now, realizing that the lasso's powers are basically just entirely Chris Pine's acting. They basically just told him, your performance is going to have to convey the powers of this lasso. And then the glowing.
See, now that's interesting. The lasso is a magical item, and yet one of the other Amazons is using it, not Diana.
Oh no, I think the lasso has inherent power of its own. This isn't like her gauntlets and the shield and such. I think it works for anybody.
Yeah, I think the basic thing about the lasso is that someone has to be holding it, and I guess it could be anybody holding it, but as long as somebody is in control, they can use it.
Here we get dirty, dingy. I just noticed all the smoke coming out of this factory. So again, they're already setting up the contrasts here. Like, this looks so much dirtier than anything on Themyscira. So Dr. Poison, how do people... So here's a nice straight-on look introduction to her. I thought that was a good choice for a villain for this movie, or one of the villains. It is from Wonder Woman's, Rogues Gallery.
Oh, I thought it was a perfect choice the second I heard it was going to take place during World War One.
Yep, it's nice when it just makes a lot of sense.
I was envisioning a scene just like this.
So we get an introduction to Poison and Ludendorff, but really we're learning more about Steve here because we get to watch him make this decision, right? Like camera straight on him. He has to decide. It's like, I guess I got to do this.
Yeah, a lot more reluctant than Diana.
He knows he's putting himself into a lot of danger. Poignant. That's good.
Now, how did she know it was him that took it?
He looks out of place.
Maybe he's the only one exiting the room.
The only one walking away who isn't working.
So here, when I was watching this the first time, I expected him to just fly away, but it did give a little bit more action and made this scene more eventful to have him come back and drop the bomb and take out the craft that might have chased him. So it is pretty smart. Sideways shot here.
This is provides some good symmetry with the end of the film too, where him and or no, not Steve, but when Chief and Samir and Charlie blow up the munitions warehouse.
I think it's also pretty good symmetry of Steve blowing up the plane that he's in when he takes all that stuff up into the air.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
I think the movie does a good job at showcasing the technology of their era and war tactics. I mean, seeing him drop a bomb like that, today, everything's with buttons.
So here is, another good connection between Diana and Steve, and they directed it well and edited it, cutting right from Steve's face to Diana's face, and they're both very concerned and emotional about the pain and suffering. So you can tell that they already have a basis to connect with each other, that they both care about what's happening in the world, even though Diana hasn't met any of them or know about it, but Diana just cares immediately about it.
Mm.
Now, Sam, I noticed that he hesitates before he says ever imagine.
Mm-hmm.
Maybe that's, the Lasso's fighting with him, saying, you're not telling the truth.
That'd be nice. I'll choose to interpret it that way. That's good. So here's the showdown, daughter and mother, who they've mostly had tension in this movie. I know some people kind of complained about that a little bit, like they wish that Hippolyta had something else besides the protectiveness and besides the, this kind of tension between her and Diana. But I think it works for this story. If it had been a full Themysciran story, then Hippolyta would have got more to do and more development. But for the story that they were telling, this is basically just what they needed Hippolyta to contribute.
I think the scenes from when Diana was a child, and she read to her and was showing her all those old treasures, I think that and their final goodbye, it's enough for me to know that, theirs was a very loving mother-daughter relationship. But you're right, I mean, the story requires Hippolyta to be very overly concerned for her well-being.
Yeah, I think you're right about those moments. I do wonder, though, about later in the movie, if Diana should have had something thinking back to her mom or having some sort of connection back later on. Because after Diana, it's sad when she leaves, and that's a great scene. But then once Diana leaves, she never really thinks about or has anything explicitly about her mom after that. I don't think.
Oh. Yeah, that would have been a good opportunity for some symmetry. I mean, I would love for them to return to Themyscira in a future film. I don't know how they could make that happen, but this entire opening of this movie, their culture and their island is just so beautiful, and I just want to see more of it. And I'm sure most of the audience does as well.
Mm-hmm.
Well, fledglings, when they fly from the nest, never see their mothers again.
Mm. Yeah, that's the idea.
That's sad. That's sad.
Here's Steve, the above-average man.
So this scene, the audiences that I watched the movie with seemed to really enjoy the scene more than I did. Like, they were big laughs for this part. For me, it's fine, but it's not like my favorite part of the movie. I actually like better the end of the scene rather than the beginning, but the audiences this got really good laughs, so it obviously works, but...
Yeah, this scene and the scene on the boat when they're going to London, they had some jokes on the first viewing that I was like, this might be a little too much for me. So I had to kind of get over that, because I eventually came down on the fact that these jokes were showing the differences between men and women, and Diana learning more about those differences, and Steve learning more about the Amazon. So once I kind of came down on that way of thinking, I was fine with the jokes, but initially I was sort of taken aback about how sort of raunchy they are. If I can be a prude about it, they're little raunchy jokes in this movie.
Mm-hmm.
A bit. But you know what, I actually, I sort of assumed they would do jokes like this before I even saw the movie, and I was expecting them to dwell on them more. And they didn't, so I remember thinking, okay, good. They dodged that. It was just funny enough for me.
I think they can be viewed as raunchy because of our culture. You know, other parts of the world, you know, sex is not such a taboo topic. So
yeah, that's true.
I mean, really, when it comes down to it, it's a matter of their biology that they're talking about,
right?
And it's in our natures, and so, you know, it's considered raunchy just because it has to do with sex, but really, you know, that's just a result of the culture in America.
Yeah,
probably other parts of the world, people didn't necessarily view it as raunchy.
Yeah, and I know in other countries they censor their movies more for violence, and they don't really care that much about sex, or like when they're giving ratings, like parental ratings. They're much more concerned about the violence in the movies. And in America, we mostly are concerned with the sexual content, and we have lots of violence for everybody. So it is, there's some cultural differences.
Yeah, Diana's just asking questions that she wants to know the answers to, and Steve is getting all awkward for reasons that she doesn't know or understand.
So they had the do something instead of doing nothing thing, which we are going to cover, and we already have started covering it in depth in our analysis. So it did go by here, and it's a big part of the movie. Like, upon second viewing, I put together a lot of the do something thread, and there's where it really kind of kicks off with Steve talking about the do something, and now Diana right here is going to do something. She's decided.
In this scene, I would have liked to see, just one shot of her, like, peeking from behind the bushes at the gate leading into that building and seeing guards there, because it's sort of like she's sneaking in, but they don't really explain that she has to sneak in.
Yeah, in the novelization it says that there's permanent guards always posted and there's only one door. So the novel can just explain that in, a sentence. But yeah, here they didn't make that super clear why she has to come in this way.
This makes me want to know what Themyscira, like what it's like at night. What do the Amazons do at nighttime? What's their nightlife like?
Could be some more raunchy stuff there, Rebecca.
It seems so quiet during this scene when it seems like everybody's asleep. So I just kind of wonder, do they?
I like how this scene kind of mirrors the scene in Man of Steel with Superman when he first takes flight. How, he leaps up and he thinks he's good, and then all of a sudden gravity starts to pull him down and he falls. But then he leaps up again and flies, and sort of similar situation here. She makes the leap. She smiles. She thinks she did it, and then she falls, and then she finds new strength and just climbs the wall with her strength.
New capabilities, yeah. Like both of them are getting new capabilities in the scene. I really like the moment coming up where they tease the costume, but they don't, it's not in focus. It's not in the center of the screen, like, oh, we can kind of tell that's it. And you can see the W a little bit, but it's, out of focus. I thought that was really smart and saves it for the No Man's Land scene.
I sort of hope that, clearly they were displaying that suit, so it's an important artifact. I'm wondering if we'll see an Amazon wearing it in Justice League. Because I believe there's supposed to be a prologue, Hippolyta and Antiope are returning, so maybe it'll be one of them.
Here's the DCU still having scenes at night, like we've been at night for the last couple scenes. How dare they?
I like that Steve rode a white horse down to the boat. White horses are usually like, Disney princes ride white horses. So I think that's kind of neat for his character.
So this is a good scene, and Patty Jenkins said she knew that this had to be emotional and had to really land here, the daughter leaving, and a lot of this story, or at least especially this first part, is a daughter leaving home and setting out on her own, and so this had to have a lot of emotional weight, and I think they pulled it off well, and it's acted well. I like here Gal Gadot's performance because she's kind of like, I need to put on a strong face and stand up to my mom, but I'm a little bit uncomfortable doing it. And I thought that the acting was really like pulled off that nuance of, I'm going to say these lines firmly, but I'm actually sort of not sure how it's going to go over.
Right. And she's surprised to hear understanding from her mother.
That's an important line.
Yeah, we talk about legacy a lot in the analysis that we do, and this is kind of mapping out the legacy that between Hippolyta and Diana, that Diana really looks up to her mother as a hero and someone who helped other people, and so she wants to live up to that legacy. And then, of course, Hippolyta giving the tiara to Diana is part of that as well.
Yeah, it's a literally handing over, but also, yeah, when she's saying like you once did and stuff. I like the hands on the face here, and then the hands off the face for this next part. That's just really good directing and acting.
The music's really beautiful here too. I was really nervous to hear what new themes they would compose for Diana. But this and the music that plays during the No Man's Land scene they're so beautiful and heroic. I love them.
So here's a little reminder about the secret.
See, so the barrier's still up. She can no longer see Themyscira for where she is, so it's not like the barrier was broken, because it's still there.
So do you think when Hippolyta said you may never return, do you think that means like Diana's forbidden from coming back, or do you think it just means you probably won't be able to find it again because it's still, hidden?
I think it's the latter.
I mean, I'd like to think it's the second one.
Yeah.
You may never return.
Right, exactly.
Not that you can't return.
Mm-hmm. it also could be just that Hippolyta thinks Diana might die, and then if she's dead, she's not going to be able to return. So it's like,
That's true.
you may not return because you might die out there. I think the chemistry between these two is good, though. Like here is, I remember the first time I was watching this, and this scene is when I was like, yeah, they're kind of syncing up as actors. I thought that was good.
It's funny how she says she's the man that can.
I think half the time, whenever I hear Diana or the Amazons talk about man, it's always, man, capital M. I think they think of it as like mankind.
Yeah.
I think in some of these, she almost might be teasing him. Like, because of course she would know that he's a person and he's a mammal and stuff, so he's going to sleep. So I almost wonder if some of these questions she's almost just ribbing him.
I think Diana's messing with him sometimes. Like some stuff she obviously doesn't know, like for real, but other things like, does the average man not sleep? Like she says it with a smile.
Mm-hmm.
Well, she doesn't know what marriage is, so it's possible she really doesn't understand Steve's behavior.
Mm-hmm.
Well, there's only so much she could know about mankind without having met one of them.
Right.
She would have just been studying the textbooks, but that only gets you so far.
Yeah.
Yeah, and this is like one of the questions I have, and I'll bring it up in our analysis too if I haven't already, but like when you know a language, to me that means you also have to know some things about mankind and culture and stuff. Like if you know the word marriage, I think that also means you have to know some of what it means and stuff. So I think there's a little bit of like inconsistencies of how she can know a language but not know anything about the words that she's saying. And to me, it doesn't quite make sense, but.
Oh yeah, I think I know where you're coming from. That was one of those details where I thought, oh man, if I think about it too much.
So here Diana thinks she was brought to life by Zeus at this point. And so they're kind of using the New 52 idea, right? Like the New 52 idea, which is that the clay origin, which is the like traditional origin in the comics, was a story told to Diana. And then Diana learns the truth, which is that she's a demigod, like with Zeus as her father. So I like that angle. I remember when the New 52 did that, I thought, oh, that's kind of clever. And I resonate more with the demigod thing in terms of how it explains the powers and everything. I can get behind it a little bit more easily, even though I know the purists and like the longtime Wonder Woman fans are probably very dedicated to the clay origin.
Right. I enjoy both. New 52 was actually my introduction to comics Wonder Woman. But I always thought that the demigod origin, it connected her to, her Greek roots in a very strong way. And it gave her kind of a unique origin. Like she's not just another metahuman, she's an actual demigod.
So it's interesting here that Steve is trying to impress Diana by saying that a spy, takes a certain vigor, and then he's more, not an average man.
Mm-hmm.
So we see hints of him liking her and wanting to impress her. And also her mentioning that she's read these volumes about sexual pleasure. And so she obviously knows about, procreation and biology. And so what it sort of adds context to that previous scene in the cave.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, she knows things.
Right.
So with Ludendorff here, I like the actor for Ludendorff, and I like Ludendorff overall. But like that scene where he's walking in and shoots the guy, to me it was a little bit like predictable or a little bit stereotypical about how you like establish a movie villain. Like you have them walk in and do something really cruel, and so then we all know that's a bad guy and stuff. So, you know, it's effective, but it's also to me kind of like predictable. Not predictable that he's going to shoot that guy, but just predictable in terms of movie making. Like, oh, let's have him do something really obviously bad, and then everybody will know he's the bad guy, you know?
I can understand that, but I sort of love it because that's the first time we ever really, well, do we see him in the scene with Dr. Poison before in the Ottoman Empire flashback, or is that just Dr. Poison?
Yeah, we see him, but he's definitely secondary, and Dr. Poison is like the emphasis.
But the first big scene with Ludendorff, like showing who he is, like he shoots a guy point blank. I don't know. I guess I'm a sucker for villains like that you really get to see like what he's capable of.
Oh yeah, I mean it's very, very effective, but
they really want to emphasize, you know, his evilness too, because you know that, and then this scene here, you know, they're setting him up as like the big bad. So I think they want the audience to feel that he could be Ares in the same way that Diana comes to believe that he is.
Right.
It's a misdirect.
So the wind just kind of blew the papers towards her, and she grabbed that page that came to her, and we're eventually supposed to believe that that's Ares' work.
Yeah, most likely, yep.
That's how
it's
I
tricky though.
it.
Yeah, upon rewatching, I try to look out for those little moments. Like, he basically just returned her own notes to her. Maybe just something that she'd forgotten or overlooked.
Or it was like the one thing that she needed to see right then, and then she'd put it together.
Exactly.
This is pretty intense, you know, look at London with the total smog and smoke and all this stuff. It's like, look at that. Man. That's why it's good to have air quality measures in place.
I wonder if it's kind of like the opening shot of the movie, showing the globe, but it's kind of like a fantasy version of it. I mean, I look at this and I'm thinking, oh man, did it really look that bad back then, or is this just, you know, an artistic rendering?
I think it was pretty bad. Yeah.
Probably a bit of both. I'm ready to go.
So now we're solidly into the fun and games part of the movie formula, where it's like the promise of the premise. So like the premise was Wonder Woman's gonna be, you know, thrust into man's world and is gonna, you know, not be sure how things are working and stuff. And so this is very clearly that kind of thing. Like she's going through the streets, she doesn't know how to dress or, you know, cover herself up, like, you know, that's this kind of thing. She doesn't know how war works, and we're just getting just seeing how the premise plays out.
I absolutely love it when her hair is down like this and flowing.
Well, it's interesting because when she leaves the mascara with Steve on the boat, her hair is up. And then now her hair is down. And so that plays into my theory that anytime she's Diana, her hair is up. And then when she's Wonder Woman, essentially, her hair is down. And so now that she's gotten the Wonder Woman costume on and she's away from the mascara, she has the hair down.
Okay.
Oh, that's really interesting. Yeah.
Because even though she had the Wonder Woman costume on in the boat, she was still sort of Diana at that point because she had just said goodbye to her mother and where she grew up, and now that she's away on her own. That sort of makes sense. I can justify that in my brain.
Yeah, it works so far, yeah.
Here it also emphasizes how different she is from everybody else. Etta's so charming, too. I really like her, and I know a lot of people would love to see more scenes with her. I can't see how they could have in this movie. And I don't know if it's possible to see her in a future film, but it makes me, I guess, doubly grateful for the epilogue.
Well, they do set it up. Beta. Yeah, they do set it up in a good way for her to be prominent in a future film. Depending on what time era they set it in.
I think
Yeah, it's the time skips that concern me, because everybody's either going to be really old or dead.
Yeah, I was thinking that'd be a good way to use her in the sequel if they skip ahead several decades, have Etta be older, but have Diana be the same. And that can be, that can play into the dynamics of their relationship.
Oh, that'll be hard to see, too.
So this is, speaking of just differences between men and women and stuff, this is just from what I noticed in my theaters. The women in the theaters loved this scene and were just laughing out loud. And for me, I was just like, okay, I see what's happening, but it was not laugh out loud funny for me, but I'm not really into fashion as much, I guess.
Yeah, no, I mean, I can understand it. I'm a bit more like Diana. I like things that are practical, but it's totally relatable. And I love how they do the glasses here. I mean, she doesn't keep them, but it's a good callback to those Golden Age comics where she actually did wear glasses as a disguise.
Mm-hmm. I thought the glasses were going to hang around longer. Like she really only has them for a few minutes.
Mm-hmm. Well, yeah, just enough to say they did.
Mm-hmm.
Well, and having the glasses is a nice setup for the alley scene to mimic the original Superman movie.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's true. I didn't notice until recently that that's the same spy, right? Like that's the German guy that's going to get him later.
Right.
Yeah.
It is, yeah. I just think it's funny with the glasses, like she puts them on to make herself less beautiful, I guess. It's like, it didn't help. She still looks great.
Yeah, I love how Etta brings that up. She's like, seriously? See, that's why Etta was trying to help her get dressed. A man can't help with that. I also love here that Etta, in just a sec, seems to notice the spy.
And that guy's still standing out front.
Yep, now he
The
follows
spy.
him. And it's good on Etta to notice.
She's a very good secretary.
So I'm not sure how now he was walking the other way from them. Like Steve and Diana were walking away, and then he was going to follow them.
Well, this might have been minutes later, though, not necessarily right after.
Yeah, it could be several blocks later and might have crisscrossed or something.
Misdirection, tools of the spy's trade.
But yeah, this is a good scene, and like you said, it has a nice connection to Superman the movie, which Patty Jenkins, I know, was inspired by.
But why would you go into a back alley where you'd be alone rather than stay in public?
Yeah. Also here in just a few seconds, I'm not sure what Steve's real plan was when he tries to headbutt the guy and stuff. It's like there's 2 others or 3 others right around you. What were you going to do after the headbutt?
Improvise. I don't know.
Look, he headbutts him. Now what's his plan? He's got 3 guys with guns on him. So it's just he's just basically totally lucky that Diana could do that. But yeah, it's great.
There go the glasses. I do love seeing them get shot off.
Yeah.
It's just a cool little detail.
Yeah, this whole scene is a nice callback to some of the early comics where they would talk about bullets and bracelets. And so that shows up in those early comics. And you get to see it here.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's really nice. I like the overhead shot that they edited in there and stuff. And Etta.
Only the fiercest could wield the sword.
This is a nice reminder of where Diana's mindset is right now. And we'll, see that this, simplistic view that Diana has is going to have to get broken apart eventually.
And Steve doesn't believe in Ares being real, which I think changes by the end of the film.
I like how she just goes in.
Diana's still being disobedient.
So
in her mind, it doesn't make any sense for her to stand outside. Like, this is a major culture shock. I mean, this time period, you know, all of them freaking out about, oh my god, there's a woman in the room here. That has got to be so alien.
this is one of the most quotable lines in here. There's a woman in here. Like, I've actually used that line a lot. Like, I'll be at work or something, and one of my like female coworkers will come in, and I'll just say, "There's a woman in here."
Oh, a little bit of a.
Isn't the guy that's speaking? Isn't that Ares?
Yeah. So Patrick.
Right. So that was the first time that he actually saw her. I wonder if he actually recognized her. And
I think he did. You know, it's not totally obvious, but he kind of pauses and like almost loses his train of thought for a second when he sees her. So I think he notices something is up, and then he immediately comes out here to find her. So I think he did know who it was.
Like, we're led to believe that maybe he hesitates because she's a woman, but maybe he hesitates because he recognized Diana.
Right. Exactly. So like on later viewings, you can kind of tell what was really the dynamic here and why he comes out right now to find her.
Well, he definitely knows who she is after she almost gives her identity up right here. Hey, he looks a little surprised by that. A little bit of analysis from my mama, who I got to see the movie with once. She was actually talking about that she feels like a lot of the sexism that Diana encounters here, like, isn't awful enough. Like, in this time period, it wouldn't just be these men at the debate there. It would be just ordinary men she would meet on the street would probably treat her very indifferently or condescendingly. My response to that was, I feel like if people were too awful to Diana, then she probably would not want to help us at all.
That's probably true.
But historically speaking, this is about as opposite from Themyscira as she could get.
Mm-hmm. Definitely. I like how she still has like a lot of faith in them. Like, they must be really smart too, right? Like, they knew this. It's like, nope, Diana, you know way more than they do.
I thought it was interesting that Ares in that last scene, his last line was "My God."
It's very pointed.
Maybe he's gone native. He speaks like us now.
This guy, the main British guy here, is very hateable. So, like, a good job by the actor for being just totally, like, you want to punch him in the face. He's just so smug.
It's the mustache.
So I think I've mentioned this on the podcast when we were doing like our first reaction episode, but like, this is actually one of my favorite scenes because I hate that British guy, and I just love it when Diana like walks right up to him and just gives him an earful.
Oh yeah, such a feel-good moment.
So how could they be planning to release the gas at the front when they hadn't perfected it yet?
Yeah, so like, you mean in the Notebook? Like, in the Notebook wouldn't be so yeah, I thought about that too. I think in the Notebook it was like formulas and stuff that you could tell what they were trying to achieve, and now Steve is just saying like, we have to kind of like assume that they are going to be able to make this gas.
Like, once it's perfected, that's what they want to do.
Yeah. It's a little bit of a leap because, yeah, in that Notebook would have not actually been a successful formula, but they wouldn't know that like without doing a pretty detailed chemical analysis and stuff.
Well, they would have to know that the information could possibly be out of date. Like, this is where they were, but, we have no idea how advanced they are now.
So to me, like, scenes like this, I think it starts to win over a lot of Wonder Woman fans because of her having this, purity of purpose, and she can just see the morality of the moment and she calls it out. And to me, it also is like, makes her unique amongst the comic book heroes that are kind of in the cinemas now. I can't think of any other hero that has that kind of a moment where they step up and they speak truth to power. But then after this, she's a little still deluded about what she thinks is happening, but her moment in the room was awesome.
I like that Diana is so offended by someone lying to her.
Yeah.
She's all about truth and the lasso of truth, and lying would be offensive to her.
Exactly. And she's such a kind and compassionate person herself. I think when people behave in an immoral way, she just doesn't get it.
You know, it's interesting how the lasso made him say, we're probably going to die, this is a terrible idea. Almost as if it compels them to also say what they're thinking, not necessarily just the truth.
Yeah.
It's hard to tell what the literal truth is, too. So I think it's just whatever's true to you.
It's a really good foreshadow, though, just in terms of the fact that he is going to die. So it's nice that way.
I like the warm lighting in here, too. Well, a lot of the way that this film looks is just so pleasing to the eye. I love this guy. The entire crew. I mean, ever since Batman v Superman, when I saw the photo, I was really looking forward to meeting all of them. And when we finally did, they're all so charming. And this guy in particular is so funny.
He tries to hug Diana. It's great.
He got a little too close. She didn't care for that.
Her face too. She's just like, nope.
She's like, I don't know you.
Yeah, this whole sequence is good.
The Charlie intro is great too. Yeah, that's not Charlie.
The casting for Charlie is really great. Just he has such a unique face. Like, look at his ears. Like, that got him the job, I think. It's a good haircut they gave him, too. It really sets off his features.
Even Steve's face is like, maybe I've made a mistake.
But it's a very effective introduction to these two. Like, we see Samir trying to, con some people, then we see him try to sweet talk Diana, and then we see Charlie doing his thing. So, like, they found a way to introduce us to them in a way that really, like, resonates with their character.
Exactly.
Interesting that Diana says you fight without honor because he's shooting from afar, but what does she think the archers do?
Well, the Amazons are skilled in all areas of combat, so I'm sure someone who can shoot a bow can also stab a man at close range. But, yeah, it's a little hypocritical.
It might just be Diana has a little bit of bias against guns. She's only seen guns once, and it was not good. So, she said it as if it was about being from afar, but she actually might just be a little bit hostile toward him because he uses guns at all.
Oh, that's a good way of putting it.
I'm not sure how Diana gets to the other side of the table, but it's good. It's impressive.
Well, she's fast. I think you could see that even in the Doomsday fight. I'm sure not as fast as a Flash, not as fast as Superman, but fast.
Yeah,
I'm in agreement with Samir.
I like the little dynamic between Etta and Sir Patrick. It starts here and then it continues a bit later too. It's a good job. It's a good little layer that they added to those Etta as a side character.
Yeah, I like that. Sir Patrick entrusts her with organizing the mission.
And this, so now that we know he's Aries, this makes sense that he is actually trying to, the reason he's supporting their team is because he actually wants Diana to go see the front and see how brutal and horrible it is. And he thinks that will actually push Diana towards his side. So, like, to me, it totally does make sense that even though he's Aries, he would do this to try to help them out.
Yeah, I think he wants her to go so she sees it.
Nice bit of comedy there from Etta.
Mm-hmm.
The little
I mean, this is just perfect for Ares. He's basically got control of both sides.
Mm-hmm.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, because he was the one pushing for peace. That seems counterintuitive, but he knows that Dr. Poison and Ludendorff are working on their big weapon, the poison gas. He knows it wouldn't actually end.
So, do people remember, was this in Justice League War, like the animated movie based on Justice League Origin that has the ice cream bit like this?
Yes, the second she picked up the ice cream cone, I was like, oh, they're going to do that part.
I question getting ice cream, though, during this time of year. Like, they're all bundled up in their their cold weather clothing.
Mm-hmm.
They look like they're freezing, and she buys an ice cream cone.
Yeah, I hadn't thought of that.
Seems strange.
She's not affected by the cold, though.
But why is the vendor even selling it? Like, how much is he selling,
Well, the weather's also always terrible in London. Well, it's hard to tell. I mean, I wonder how long ice cream has actually been sold at this time. I mean, that's a little historical detail you'd have to look up, but for all I know, it could be something new. And
so here we're getting a slight bit of slow-mo. And so like Patty Jenkins says, she wanted to use the slow motion when, from Diana's perspective, she was seeing something important or moving, or she was seeing something for the first time. So that was just a subtle little slow-mo, but I think it's a good use of it, right? Like, so that we as an audience have a chance to see this is impacting Diana.
I didn't even think of it as being like, Diana's vision, but that's a wonderful way of framing it.
Mm-hmm.
Well, the ice cream is less likely to melt in the wintertime.
That's true.
That is a good point.
All right, another Ludendorff scene. So he's walking straight towards camera. They frame Ludendorff a lot in like center frame. I think that shows power, right?
Yeah, very intimidating.
Makes him very sinister.
So it's interesting how first we saw the one side and their discussion about strategy, and now we're seeing the other side.
Mm-hmm.
And they're planning on giving up.
So these people could have survived if they would have agreed with him, right? But since they didn't agree, then he's like, okay, plan B, gas him.
That's the thing. They wanted to roll over. He can't have this. This is like culling the herd, I think.
Now, Alex, was it you who didn't really like this laugh, or was it somebody on Twitter that's one of our listeners, when they slam the door and kind of have an evil laugh and they thought it was like a bit over the top?
I don't remember if I specifically mentioned that to you, but
Yeah, right here.
it does seem awkward.
Yeah, it's a little bit over the top.
It is a little over the top.
Yeah.
It made me laugh, though.
But you really shouldn't be laughing, right? Like, you're supposed to be like, kind of like, putting your hand over your mouth in like shock that they're doing this.
Right. It's something of a, what is it? I mean, bad guys versus bad guys scenario. I mean, I don't really know.
Well, it's also a little confusing why he's taking that powder at that moment once he closes the door.
That's actually my question.
I like Charlie
I feel
fan.
like they were just trying to have some sort of visual appeal to the scene.
Yeah. I like the fire here and the lighting that the fire gives to this It's very warm, like coming from that like deep, cold cavern stone kind of gray colors to now have this warm orange glow from the fire is really nice, I think.
Well, here's a question I had about Chief, and I was thinking maybe I'd put this question to Twitter at some point, but he introduces himself as Napi, and from my understanding is that that's a Blackfoot deity. Mm-hmm. So is that his real name, or was he just making a reference?
Yeah, I think it is a deity from that tribe. I think we have some notes like for when we get to this scene in our analysis. We'll try to sort that all out. I don't know the answers yet, but hopefully we can figure them out by the time we get there.
I mean, it could be both a mythological name and a real name, sort of like, you know, there's people who might be named Hercules. But it makes sense. I think it's supposed to be a trickster god of some kind, and him being a smuggler, it fits.
It is interesting that Diana shakes his hand or his arm, you know, at that moment when he's saying that. And she very noticeably did not shake Samir's hand and didn't shake Charlie's hand. So it's like, Chief, she...
Well, Samir was going in for a hug.
So Diana's sort of learning a little more as we progress that it's not all black and white.
Mm-hmm.
Because now, for example, Chief is saying that Steve's people took from his people.
Yeah, and even just the fact...
But she knows that Steve's a good guy, so it's sort of like... She's seeing that it's not just black and white.
Right, yeah.
Yeah, the entire crew here introduces shades of gray. You know, she can see how the war has affected Charlie. You know, he has PTSD, it gives him nightmares, it causes him to lash out.
Yeah, and she knows there were previous wars before this.
There's a bit of like sort of like an honorable scoundrel in Chief and Samir.
Yeah. Now this is the scene that they added in reshoots, which I think was a really good call. Like I guess it was originally in the script, but then they made it much simpler when they did like the principal photography, and then afterward they realized they wanted to put this back in, so they went and did reshoots, and I think that was a good call because I think this really builds up the emotion more to the No Man's Land scene.
Yeah, this part it's hard. I mean, this is where it becomes just a full-out war movie.
Yeah, like look at that. So now we've seen a few big wide shots of Man's World, and none of it looks very good. The city, and now the battlefield, and the destruction, and you know the rubble and everything.
It's so weird to hear Patty talk about how she had to really fight from the No Man's scene to be in the movie. Mm-hmm. Like, I guess maybe from the screenplay, there were some studio execs who didn't get it, and she had to, you know, explain why it was so important. And, I mean, I don't think, if this scene weren't here, this movie wouldn't be half of what it is.
Yep. I love this here, how Diana's languages pays off, right? Like she speaks all these languages, so she can actually connect with this woman in the woman's own language. That's how important that is.
Mm-hmm. I thought everyone's voice is, you can tell how much strain they're under, like, you know, Charlie and Chief sort of yelling at them to keep moving. It gives you the feel that, yeah, they're under fire. Just being here in the trench is no guarantee of safety. Really builds up the tension.
I like that there's a scene that says, "Do not stand about here." Mm-hmm. Right where those soldiers are.
Yeah, I
Do
saw
not
that.
stand here.
I like how Steve says no man can cross no man's land, but she's not a man.
Yeah.
I was so expecting them to do the Lord of the Rings line there, but they didn't do it, and that's probably for the best.
I am no man.
Yeah. Like, I wouldn't have hated it if they'd done that, but I remember sort of appreciating that she didn't say that. Because I did sort of see it coming from a mile away.
She's taking her hair down so she could become Wonder Woman.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Tiara goes on. That's great. So the music is good here.
And it's funny because it almost looks like when she becomes Wonder Woman, they have like a different makeup for her because her face just kind of glows.
Yeah, it's a bit of a heightened reality.
And I think a lot of scenes in this movie, she just looks the part and she's got that glow from her pregnancy.
Oh yeah.
So I like the music here a lot. The slow-mo, again, I think the slow-mo is good for parts of these just to really bring that emphasis to it. Makes it more epic, I think.
I love how calm, like when she blocked that last bullet, she almost kind of smiles a little bit. Like, this is where I'm supposed to be. This is my moment.
Mm-hmm. And leading up...
Yeah, she sort of tested it out, and then she was like, I got this. It's fine.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
And it all, like, a lot of things build up to this moment, you know, like the tiara going on, her, like, not helping those people on the way, and now she's like, no, I am going to help people this time. And then her and Steve talked about the do something, like, we have to do something. And so, like, a lot of the threads that have been laid down in the movie so far, they all come together, and I think that's part of why it pays off so well. But also, these are just great shots. Like, I love her arm, like, her off arm is back and, like, clenched, and to me, that just brings the intensity to it even more.
Now, what if they had shot her legs while she was standing?
Like when because right now, her body's protected by the shield, but you mean like before she crouched down?
Right, but when she was standing up, they could have easily hit her leg.
Yeah, they just missed.
That's true, they could have shot her in the leg.
It was still pretty far shots for most of her, like, walk up.
I actually love this part so much when the rest of the soldiers go over, because they've been entrenched there for months, right?
Mm-hmm. Oh yeah, a long time.
So, so all of them just going over at once. That took my breath away when I first saw this.
So
one of my favorite shots in the whole movie is when Wonder Woman or Diana, when she takes her shield and smashes that gun, whatever that is, that weapon.
Yeah, the big gun.
I just think that's so awesome.
I also love that they have her taking out the weapons of war. They almost emphasize that more than her taking out the people. And I just like that. So that gun is definitely a big one. And then later she'll take out the gunship and the tank and stuff.
Yeah, and that's a big part of the final Ares battle, too.
That's a nice little comedic beat. Just very subtle, but it's a nice moment to just get a little breath and then go into the next action part.
Yeah. Well, this is the boys. I mean, Steve already knows how powerful she is, but this is the first time they've seen it.
Samir looked at Steve, and Steve sort of nodded as if saying, "You heard what she said."
And then this entire scene, oh my god. Forgive me if I fangirl.
This was a great scene with her.
It's not quite Batman Martha Rescue, but it's pretty close.
It's up there. I mean, I think the more I watch it, the more I love it. I feel like in my mind, the two scenes are about tied right now.
Yeah, I think, like, for the character and where she's come from and, like, her character arc, it's maybe better. Well, it's maybe equal. But in terms of pure action choreography and execution, I think that the Batman one is still a little bit better.
See, like, that last shot of Diana, she looked totally different. I almost feel like she had to have been pregnant during that shoot. There's, like, certain
makes
scenes
her more powerful.
She just looks like more like Wonder Woman than Gal Gadot. It's just, I don't know how to explain it.
I think last time I watched this movie, I didn't realize that Chief had a bomb attached to a tomahawk. Blew my mind.
Yeah, here's her taking out another weapon of war.
By flipping it.
Yeah.
Flipping and throwing it.
So there's
Pretty sure those 3 teenage girls in front of me at the theater were screaming this entire time.
There are a few moments in this that the CGI and stuff is not perfect, like you can kind of tell. But for me, it's still worth it for this movie to save a little bit of money. Like the $149 million budget or whatever, it to me is so smart because it just takes so much pressure off of like a huge box office performance. And so if
Right.
there's tiny
Oh.
little moments where the CGI isn't perfect, to me it's worth it if you can just make the financials work so much better, and we can just keep getting a lot more comic book movies.
Right. Actually, thank you for bringing that up. I was planning on mentioning that at some point because, I've heard people criticize the CGI, but when I watch this movie, all I think about is how this movie has a much smaller budget than Batman v Superman did.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm more just impressed that Patty Jenkins was able to do as much as she did with a lower budget.
Definitely.
It makes me a bit forgiving, and honestly, it just kind of blows me away when I see some of the CGI scenes.
Yep, and little tiny moments of the CGI being imperfect, it doesn't really take away from the characters and the themes and the the larger things that are happening. So I think it was money well spent, and yeah, it's smart. So here's the payoff.
I sort of assume that the Wonder Woman sequel, they're just going to throw all kinds of money at it, since this one did so well.
Great payoff with the
I was just
shield.
about to say that.
Yeah, and this is kind of the thing where it's like everybody in the audience is going to get that. Nobody's going to miss the connection. Where BVS has some like amazing connections, but some people will be like, "Oh, I never even noticed that that like visual echo from before or that callback from before." But this one, it's like they just make it much more obvious, where everybody's going to get it, everybody can cheer it, just like these people in Veld,
Mm-hmm.
On my first viewing, I was uncomfortable with the fact that Diana, like, knocks out a church, basically, and, like, destroys the top of a church.
Oh.
But I sort of came down on the fact that a quote, bad guy was in there and had taken it over, and she was reclaiming it, I guess. So I felt a little better about that.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. The lives of the people are more important than a building. The building can be fixed.
Well, she
For
doesn't
sure.
necessarily know about the Catholic religion per se.
That's true. That's true. How would she know that? Yeah.
So somewhere behind in the background there is like Zack Snyder and Clay Enos, right? This is the scene where they...
I've actually never seen them. Has anyone said if like it's possible to see them, or if they're just like too far in the background?
Yeah, I know they're two of the soldiers back there, but I'm not sure which ones they are.
Mm-hmm.
Somebody a listener will help us find them.
Well, this line from Samir is always very important.
So this is really nice, again, where it's character development for Samir, but it's also a learning opportunity for Diana. So each time she's learning more about the dynamics of this world and some of the unfairness and other things.
Right. And Chief there refusing to take money.
It lets us see that there's a face behind the soldiers. They're not just, nameless men going out to fight. They actually have their own identities and lives.
Mm-hmm. German High Command is pretty close to the front.
I think, Europe was only so big. We're all here in America, right? We don't have that same experience of being so close to the war. I don't think there were very many places you could go where you were far, far away from it.
So here's where Diana thinks that she figures it out. And some people were upset that Diana is wrong, and they're like, your lead character shouldn't be wrong about something as important as this. But for me, I think it totally works in the learning that Diana has to have.
Wait, was that a real complaint? That Diana should never be wrong?
It's interesting that Ares doesn't want them to go to the gala because that would interfere with his plans.
Yeah, he doesn't want them to do anything to, disrupt the demonstration.
Because if Ludendorff is stopped prematurely, then his plan won't necessarily come to fruition.
Mm-hmm.
This is probably the greatest scene in the movie.
It's really good. And it's also just
It's very sweet.
it's well sequenced, where after the big action scenes, you always have scenes like this where you can connect with the characters and kind of breathe and have some emotion. So it's just good sequencing, and it fits well with where the story needs to go too.
Of course, heartbreaking since we know that all of these people will die.
Yeah, like everybody you see there is going to get gassed.
I think that ties in with the time theme, right? Like, these are all just fleeting moments. Could end at any moment. You wouldn't, you can't know what's coming.
Yeah, so this is just a nice endearing moment. Like, they've been through a lot together already. Like, they haven't known each other for a long time, but they've been through a lot. So, and now I think this is just a nice, they're feeling good. They have a night to relax, and I think this totally makes sense in terms of their character development and their relationship development.
I think a lot of it, I actually feel like a lot of them kind of being able to laugh and joke around, like, their chemistry has been noticeable since the very beginning. Like, they've always seemed like they were very comfortable around each other. So I never really felt that their relationship was too rushed. I mean, it's a movie, it's 2.5 hours, things are going to happen quick, but I feel like they've experienced enough together that it would bring them together romantically, relatively quick.
Yeah, I agree.
Yeah, I buy into the romance of this mostly because of the lighting and the environment. Like, they're in this cute little town where these couples are dancing, they're being serenaded, all of the lights from the restaurant, the cafe are really pretty. Even the cathedral or the church has candles lit, and the snow falling. Yeah, so it's all very romantic, so I can totally buy the fact that they would have this connection in this scene.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, this is the sort of place where people fall in love.
It's interesting that Diana says, "You're awfully close," where on the boat she had no problem with him being close. So obviously now their relationship has gone further, so she realizes, that they're having a connection. So now...
Yeah, it's different now.
Yeah.
Yeah, before it was platonic. She's like, why won't you sleep next to me?
This is some of the most insight we get into Steve here, too. Like, this, where here's what's the way Steve is talking about this. And, because a lot of times he has kind of this, like, protective guard up of being the, like, cool spy, like, I'm cool under pressure and stuff. But here he opens up a little bit. And he does it, like, he doesn't just open up and gush out about his true feelings, but he lets a little cracks. He has some cracks open where we can see, like, oh, he's got some loneliness. He's, he's not sure what's going to be out there for him after the war, because he's just so wrapped up into everything that's going on now, and he can't even think about what life would be like after this.
Right. And he'll never know, so that's the same thing. Heartbreaking, once again, and I feel like that's something Diana's thinking about when he dies, that they had peacetime to look forward to, and now he'll never see it. They just have these moments.
So he was about to leave, and that look from Diana is, I think, a pretty clear signal.
It's a very tastefully done love scene.
Now, wasn't there a 23 in the helicopter in Suicide Squad, and now there's a 23 on the door in this movie? I wonder if there's something to this 23 thing.
Wait, what? I never knew that.
Yeah, and there's 23 at the very end of Suicide Squad 2, I think, on, like, the Joker's squad that breaks in or something.
Oh my, is there like a production designer who worked on both movies?
I don't know if there's that much overlap, actually, with Suicide Squad. I'm not sure. So I like how they pull out here to this shot with the snow falling. I thought that was really, really great. Because that snow is magical, and so it's like Steve and Diana are having a magical, night together in there. But we pulled out before it got distasteful.
I gotta say something about that exterior shot what do you call that? The establishing shot.
Hmm.
It looked like a painting to me. I don't know,
Yeah.
something about the colors. That just really struck me this time. The visual look of this movie is very different from Man of Steel or Suicide Squad or Batman v Superman. It's got its own identity, and it looks great.
Hmm. They did a good job with the lighting here too, where it actually looks like it's morning, like the angle that the sunlight is coming in, and the like quality of the sunlight. A lot of times, I notice movies don't pay that much attention to detail. They'll just say in the dialogue that it's morning, but it doesn't really look like morning. This one actually looks like morning.
And when it coming through the trees here.
I feel like Diana has never smiled more than that the morning after she sleeps with Steve.
She has such an infectious smile.
The editing was really good in this transition from that last scene to this scene because Charlie's still singing into this new scene. And every time I saw it in the theater, there would be a chuckle because people thought it was really funny that he was still singing.
Yeah.
So I thought that was a nice touch.
It's good. And it's a chance we definitely get to know Charlie and Samir a bit more here. And then Chief has a good moment here where he says he does believe her.
I like how Charlie and Samir are positioned sort of like a little devil and a little angel on Steve's shoulders. You know, each having their own contrasting view of it, of Diana.
There was an idea I had way back in Batman v Superman when we first saw that photo. I kind of thought that thematically that Steve and these men were kind of like a proto Justice League for Diana. It's a group of very unique individuals going on this mission, being heroes. I feel like in Justice League it'll feel like a very similar situation to her.
Yeah, I wonder if she'll reference that. They may not talk about it, but I definitely agree with you, Sydney, that I think the Odd Fellows are kind of a proto Justice League for Diana.
Right, especially because they're original characters, correct? Or they're in the comics now, but I think they're original characters for this movie, and that's why it made me think. I was like, what are they trying to say through them? Well, all of them are here to teach her something about man's world, but also the way that they're working together. It's like the Justice League, only they don't have cool costumes. Well, they have cool costumes, but not.
To me, this last bit was a really good example of how I love humor in these movies. Like Chief rolling up in the car and saying there's a field full of them, and then like them looking and Diana is already gone. Like I love that kind of humor. That's probably my favorite type, and it's like a perfect moment to put it in because we're between tension, we're between like dangerous scenes, and so it's a perfect time to have some humor beats.
I think I saw a video essay once that was talking about a way of showing humor, and one of the ways was things suddenly appearing on screen or something suddenly disappearing from screen.
Mm-hmm.
So it's a little like that.
This is a nice way to use Samir's skills too.
I really hope we can see. I feel like Samir is a character who could show up as a cameo in a future film, like as an actor in an old movie. Mostly, I just want him to, achieve his dreams, but I feel like that would be a really cute callback.
Well, once the war is over, he doesn't need to be a soldier anymore.
Right,
so
yeah.
Maybe he could, he could pursue his acting
so what do I
dream.
do? Mm-hmm.
It's a great way to introduce the blue dress. It's like so striking, and she's looking at it, so you just know. You can, like the audience members can think a couple steps ahead to like, oh, she's going to use that. I just noticed they have Dr. Poison in the green again. Like before it was like a green lab coat kind of thing. Now it's the green, different outfit, but still the green for the comics.
Yeah, all dressed up. So this thing with Steve here, is he trying to flirt with her, or is he just, trying to give her attention?
I got the impression that he was trying to flirt with her for the mission, not
Right.
personally, but I feel like he was trying to charm her and have her open up to him.
Yeah, I think it was his tactic,
Yeah.
was the flirting, yeah.
It's a bit of a James Bond moment there.
Because then there's that moment where she sees him look at Diana, and you get the impression that, okay, she was sort of starting to open up, and then to see him look at another woman,
Mhm.
then it makes her feel like she's being just duped,
Yeah.
and played by a player.
Mm-hmm.
I always just thought it was funny. Maybe it's a combination of that and like the accent he's doing. Also, the mask was a great design choice for Dr. Poison.
Mm-hmm.
I looked. I think somebody posted something about this, that those masks were real. There was a woman who developed them for soldiers who'd been injured. But I'd never seen it before, so it seemed like a fantasy detail for the film that was just really unique. But finding out it has basis in reality was sort of just makes it more cool.
Yeah, and it gives it the look of the trope of a villain having a scar, that kind of thing. So she has a more exaggerated scar with the mask.
That's great lighting on the dress with Diana there too.
Oh man, blew his cover.
When we get to our analysis of this scene, we'll have to work together to try to really figure out I feel like there's something really, really special about the sword in the dress, like something symbolic. And to me, it represents something about like a female directed movie and, the highest grossing one ever. And then to have that image of there's this power that's, hidden or tucked inside of a typical version of like female beauty. But it's, but it's not weak. It's not, it's not a dainty flower of beauty. It literally has a sword that could slash your head off, in it. I think it probably has something to do with like Patty Jenkins, how she describes it as like Diana is beautiful and powerful, and you don't have to have one or the other. And like, to me, the dress and the sword like captures it in one singular moment.
Exactly. It doesn't matter what she's dressed up as, she could always kill you.
I like that line that the Greeks understood that war is a god. Very much
I like the
playing
way he
into
delivers
the
it.
Ares. Yeah.
Yeah, she probably is convinced that he's Aries based on the way he talks to her.
Mm-hmm.
If there was any doubt in her mind.
Right. And conversely, this is actually the scene where I was almost certain that he wasn't Ares. Like, I think, once she became so certain, I immediately thought, hey, he's probably not Ares.
So this is good. These two characters have just gotten so close, but now there's like, drama inserted into their relationship where she was so close to her goal and he stopped her. So like, I thought that was a really good way in the story. It made sense to add a little drama to their relationship.
That line she says to Steve, actually, the "what I do is not up to you," I'm pretty sure that's been my favorite line from this movie ever since I heard it in the trailer. It's just it's such a good girl power moment, but it's also true to Diana's character.
That dress flying off from the horse, that's very well executed.
Mm-hmm.
The way it flows.
I always get nervous about the horse starting to follow her. I'm like, no, go back.
Yeah, so this is just good filmmaking where it's like you take all of the joy and happiness and all the smiling faces of that last scene, and now you just flip it on its head to, you know, now that all becomes the same amount of sadness and like tragedy.
Mm-hmm. One thing about the promotion for this movie, you know, when you look at them, it looks like almost all of the posters for the film incorporated this kind of misty orange effect that I think is, you know, meant to make you think of the gas.
Oh yeah, I know what you mean.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, the posters look really pretty with all those colors until you realize, oh, that's supposed to be mimicking the mustard gas. And it gets a little creepy when you look at it from that point of view, but I think it's really smart because it plays into the story and her character.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it really emphasizes that, you know, this is a war movie. This is
right.
Wonder Woman experiencing the horrors of war.
Now, all these people in Val that died, it's not just some town of people that died. She actually met these people and, you know, celebrated with them.
Yeah.
So she got to know them on a more personal level.
Mm-hmm.
So it's all the more painful for her.
Mm-hmm.
And the fact that she could have prevented it, of course. But
Right. There's the other sideways shot.
Or at least in her mind, she could have prevented it.
Yep.
Right.
I've never quite understood. There's one shot in this sequence where it goes, it sort of turns sideways. There's that one shot that turns sideways, and I've never quite liked that. I don't know why that shot is there like that.
Yeah.
I don't know if
I've
anyone
made a
has
note
any
to try to
thoughts.
figure that out in the analysis,
Yeah,
but
Sam, didn't you mention that it looks like a scene from earlier in the movie? During the
airplane.
where Steve blows up the factory? I mean, I don't know what that means, but
Right,
Yeah,
that's the thing.
I
So
did a similar sort
I
of
noticed
shot.
the connection, but I haven't figured out why they're connected, and I'm not sure if there is a good reason. This is pretty.
Well, you know, try something. Not everything's going to work.
I like the flip off the horse, though, which also connects back to the Amazons flipping off their horses like that. She made her way up there pretty quickly. Like regular little soldiers don't have much of a chance against her.
Mm-hmm. Goes right back into the gun.
Another weapon of war taken out by Diana.
This is pretty. I mean, this is pretty short, but it's kind of a cool little fight, since it's in such close quarters.
So, of course, his strength right now certainly would enforce her idea that he's Ares.
Yep.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, like to her, this is not a normal person, so it just confirms what she thought, that it's Ares. That's pretty impressive to grab that sword like that.
Something I always thought of here was that Ludendorff was an actual person.
Mm-hmm.
And he definitely didn't die during World War One. So there's literally some alternate history going on in the DC universe.
So I actually have not thought of this yet. Like, what the heck is Ludendorff thinking right now? Like, he's fighting this woman. Like, what would be going through his mind? Because, yeah, Ludendorff is just a regular guy who has this, you know, gas that makes him stronger. But
Yeah.
I never really thought of it from
Life
his
comes at you
perspective.
fast.
Like, here's this woman who just got jumped up here, and now I'm fighting her, and she's amazing. He has no idea, like, where she would have come from or whatever.
Well, he looks pretty weirded out.
I love all the lasso work in this scene.
Mm-hmm.
So cool to see how like powerful she can be with the lasso.
Right.
Yeah, I think it's awesome that they have her using it as a weapon, not just to get the truth out of people.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
Well, I didn't really notice until I think the second time I saw the movie that the way that the lasso behaves she's not using it like a real lasso. It goes like where she wants it to go.
Mm-hmm.
Right.
Like it doesn't obey physical
like an
laws.
extension of her arm.
Yeah. So that's kind of neat because I think from the comics I always just assumed that it behaved like a real lasso, and so I can't tell if this is an original thing to the movie because they just thought it would be cool, or if that's the most practical way of doing it without it looking forced. But in any case, it's awesome.
And setting this whole sequence at night really makes that lasso pop with the way it shines and the way it lights up.
Mm-hmm.
You mean the DCEU might actually have reasons for putting things at night?
You know, sometimes filmmakers have a reason for setting scenes in the nighttime.
No, they're just trying to be edgy.
They're just trying to be dark.
Yeah.
It's funny how Diana just assumes everybody's going to stop what they're doing, even if she had killed Ares.
Yeah, so she's learned a little bit, like she said to Steve, it's not just the Germans, it's actually both sides that are under Ares' influence, but yeah, she still thinks that Ares is the key and that will end it. Which it actually kind of does later, so she's kind of right on that part, but not at this moment.
Well, actually, let me see. We'll probably talk about this more when we get to this in the analysis, but technically speaking, the war ends, I think, after Steve successfully blows up the plane, and they blow up the warehouse here.
Mm-hmm.
Because the war was going to end. They were, there were those peace talks. They were headed towards an armistice.
That's true.
The thing about Ludendorff was he was trying to keep the war going, and he was going to do that with this incredible new weapon.
Mm-hmm.
So all of that ends once they destroy the weapon.
Yeah, you're right.
The Ares fight pretty much just becomes an ideological battle between him and Diana.
Mm-hmm. That's true. Yep, everything was already in place to end the war, so they just had to basically foil Ludendorff's plot.
Yeah. I think I thought that too. I was like, oh wait, it actually was Ares, but then upon rewatching it, I kind of realized, oh no, that was something different. The war was going to end anyways. Well, it wasn't going to end anyways. Steve had to die, but...
I just noticed, I just thought that when Bruce was talking to Diana in the cemetery and he said that men are still good,
mm-hmm.
It must have triggered something in her memory thinking back to this scene, this moment, because Steve mentions how, men aren't always good.
Mm-hmm.
Well, he says that here, and then he sacrifices himself, which is very similar to what Superman did. So, despite what he says that, there's darkness in the world, that people aren't always good, he proves that he is a good man.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and I like that the DCEU allows their heroes to sort of question mankind, because Superman, even in BVS, is like, there's no good in this world. So I think that's a common element that goes throughout the entire franchise, is the belief that mankind can be good.
Mm-hmm. And the DCEU haters, they stop at that moment when the heroes are at a low point, and they forget that they forget to watch the movie to the end of the movie to realize that the hero finds the hope and finds the goodness by the end. So by the end, Diana says okay, men are not always good, and they are, part of the problem, but they also are good. It's both are true, that they're bad and they are good. And Superman has a low point in BVS. But then he comes out of it and he, connects with Lois, and he sees what he has to do, and he does save the world. So it's to me, it's I hate it when the DCEU critics, they point to that low moment of questioning it, and then they just assume that's where it ended. It's no, that's not where it ended. That was part of a story that was going to a bigger point.
Right.
Hear, hear.
But it's very possible that these events and here at the end of this movie and those words that Steve spoke to her, compared to what Bruce was saying to her.
Oh yeah.
Sort of invigorated her into joining his attempt to assemble the team.
Yeah, definitely. I like that where she goes for the sword and it's not there. The reveal of Sir Patrick as Ares, I thought was just visually, it was done well. I could see it coming that he was going to be Ares, but a lot of the people that I talked to and friends that I saw this with, they did not know it was going to be him. They thought maybe it was going to be Dr. Poison, like that the twist was going to be it was actually the woman is Ares, not the man.
Oh, that's an interesting idea. I felt pretty validated because I thought it was going to be David Thewlis too.
I actually didn't think it was going to be anybody. I thought he was just going to show up.
No.
But even for me, I suspected very heavily that it was him. Like through the movie, I'm like, oh, it's probably him because he's pushing for peace, but the twist is going to be that he's Ares. But even if I saw it coming, I still think that they executed it well. Him in this room, and then the camera work, and now right here where the camera is going to pan over and he's gone. Like it's still, to me, is a really good job. And for me, it's not all about like the twist and tricking me. It's just about the execution. If you execute it well, I don't care if I saw it coming. You still did a really good job doing it.
Right. And they did, it's not entirely the same, but another New 52 connection is the way that they first portrayed Ares was not as this giant armored, clearly violent being, but as just some old guy. Like he looked like an ordinary person. And his role in the story was different, so, this is still Ares, the antagonist. But I kind of like that they did the misdirect of him appearing to just be an ordinary man.
And he has a limp. He has a cane. So he's injured.
Yes.
And we find out why, but he doesn't look all powerful.
Exactly. I did also love this reveal. It's probably something that you could see coming, but I wasn't really thinking about it the first time I saw the movie. So when he said, you're the God Killer, in my head I just thought, oh wow, that's awesome. I like that twist.
Yeah, I like the two together. Also, we find out he's really Ares, and then we find out Diana is really the God Killer. So I like it's like boom, boom. Like, you thought you knew what it was, and now boom, boom. Now you get the real answers to it. I like here where we have a lot, for the Oddfellows to do. So it's not just Diana here in the climax. It's like, oh no, all the characters we've been following, they have their part to play here at the end.
And this is the Clark and Zod moment, right?
Yes, the temptation.
Yep. Join me, temptation. With a vision, paired with a vision, yeah. Yeah, so it's the same thing Alex was talking about, Alessandra, before. Kind of come by and just subtly give her a little suggestion.
I suppose you could argue that Ares being alive could potentially perpetuate the war because, he interferes in small ways like that. But even so, every war that happens after he's destroyed is still going to happen. So it's not like people didn't still do this to themselves.
Right, like World War II still happened.
Yeah.
Exactly. So it's, anyone who says like, I don't agree with the idea that the movie sort of chickened out and, oh yeah, it turns out killing the God of War did end the war. Because it really doesn't. Once again, the Oddfellows are all doing their job, and war still happens after this, so.
See, I don't think Ares believes what he's telling Diana. I think the irony is that he says he's the God of truth, but he's being loose with the truth. And he's just saying what he thinks Diana, what will convince Diana to join him.
Maybe. I sort of do believe that, that he doesn't like mankind. So it could be one of those things where it's hard to tell what the lasso considers literal truth. So I think he does believe what he's saying.
Could he be?
But at the same time, the lasso could not affect him.
We don't even know
way.
if the lasso works on a god.
Well, could he be manipulating the lasso because the electricity coming off of his hands is kind of going on to the lasso? So I wonder if he's manipulating it and its abilities to read people and decipher the truth. I wonder if he's somehow massaging it a little bit.
Yeah, that certainly could be the case.
Possibly. But then it's kind of like what Diana says when she says, it's all about what you believe. Does she choose to agree with him? Does she choose to believe what he says?
I like that flight move that he has up.
I was really excited to see this scene in the theaters. I didn't expect so much action in this movie.
Mm-hmm.
I didn't expect some like super powered battle. So I was really happy when I saw this.
It's a very effects-filled scene. I saw people complaining about, it being really big and destructive and, like a typical third act scene. And, maybe some of that is true, but I actually find myself enjoying it a bit more every time I see it.
Mm-hmm.
Maybe because it's so familiar to me now.
Yeah. I like it too. And like the stuff that Ares represents and that he's talking about, to me, it is a logical conclusion to stuff they had set up earlier in the movie. So even though there's big, concrete things smashing around and explosions and stuff, for me, I can go with that because where the like themes of the story are going are coherent. And for me, that's like the main thing that I want to see out of a movie is I want coherence. And it is coherent, even though it gets big and bombastic and stuff here at the end. So for me, I'm fine with it. The first time I watched it, I thought the third act was the weakest, but as I've seen it more, I think it all works together pretty well.
Well, a lot of it seems to revolve around, how you take the I believe in love bit. But, if you think the line delivery is corny, I guess that's fine and I can understand that. But I believe in the sentiment.
Mm-hmm.
And it kind of it becomes awkward to talk about because you get into that whole what is love conversation. But it's not, it's not super simple. She's not just talking about her love for Steve here. It's, a more all-encompassing compassion for humanity.
Yeah, I think so too. Like Steve is a big part of it, but I think the people who think that it's only for Steve missed the bigger humanity parts of it. Steve is central to it, but he's not the only part of it.
Right. This is a very Casablanca-like scene. It's not just the airplane. I think somebody mentioned that Steve being a reluctant hero, kind of like Rick from Casablanca.
Mm-hmm.
Well, Casablanca was a heavy influence on Patty Jenkins with this movie. She wanted it to be Casablanca-esque, so I'm glad that you picked that up. It is very reminiscent of, especially the ending scene.
So I like that this big battle is, they were fighting with instruments of war again, like they were throwing bombs at each other, and then she was throwing a missile back at him and stuff.
Right, and his armor is made of,
the
metal and the munitions around him.
Right, so for me, that works really well with things they had set up before in the movie. And going all the way back to Hippolyta saying, about war and stuff.
Thematically, it lines up.
I like the visual imagery of the fire because it makes Ares more of a... It's him being a god of war, but there was that whole temptation of Diana, so he's very much a Satan figure in the movie, and so it's sort of reminiscent of hell and hellfire, and so I really like seeing that. And of course, you only really get to see that pop at night, so it's another visual reason to have a sequence like this set at night because the fire looks really great in the dark.
Yeah. And Patty Jenkins uses film too, and she said with the film you get the darker blacks, like right there is a really nice black. And Patty says she likes that better on film, and then when those explosions happen, they come out better. Yeah.
Yeah, it's all about the contrast. I'm actually looking at this. The color scheme is it's black and orange, like fire and the lights and the lasso. And it kind of is making me think of like what I said earlier about the gas. You got that orange mustard gas, And even the lighting for many of the calmer scenes, it's very warm light. It's I don't know, it's so consistent across the entire movie, even in action scenes here.
Yeah, it's really strong color palettes through the movie, like the greens and blues and Themyscira, and then the oranges and blacks that you're talking about. And there's a little bit of blue here, which is almost just because that contrasts with the orange, right?
I like how she turns over and she sees the Oddfellows there. Let me see. I guess there's going to be a moment later on. Oh no, here it is. Where they all believe they're going to die.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
But they're holding on to each other, and then witnesses Steve's death right here. It's a lot more than Steve, although Steve is obviously the most shocking.
Yeah.
And this scene gets even more emotional if you actually think back to Hippolyta.
Oh, yeah.
The fact that Diana's wrapped up here by Ares is, I think, a connection to the original comics where William Moulton Marston would have her bonded up and wrapped up a lot.
Another great performance from Pine here.
So I think they do a good job with this scene as well, and they let it breathe. Like, it could have been over already. Like, they could have just shown Steve and then he shoots it and it blows up. But they let this linger on him long enough, and they let it really settle in, and they give him this moment to, on his face, kind of show what he's going through. The close-ups. So there is the acute pain of Steve dying here, and I think that the acute pain is kind of what maybe like washes over here for a few moments, but then I think by the end she puts it into the bigger context of kind of love overall for mankind.
Mm-hmm.
And that just giving mankind a chance to, like, go to their better angels.
She kind of does look like the Flash here.
Yeah.
Yeah, she's pretty quick.
Yeah.
I think that's a side effect of her strength. Like, she can propel herself.
And the slides and glides were kind of a signature move for her. Like, in that, the fight scene in Veld, she also slides several times. Mm. So I like that she has that almost as a kind of calling card.
I like how his voice is a little different here.
Yeah, he's in God mode right now.
Right.
She's like, nope, I'm still mad at you.
She's punching the helmet. Wow. That's gotta hurt. Yeah, so this is Ares' big miscalculation, right? He thinks that this is gonna like push Diana over the edge to hatred and stuff and vengeance, and instead it has the opposite effect. Like, Diana has compassion, even for Dr. Poison.
I think the actress here said that her injury, that her burn on her face was a result of her experiments. But I kind of always felt that Diana here was seeing her as, a victim of cruelty, or, that this was, something that happened to her.
Yeah.
Like, it kind of just is a reason why maybe she has compassion for her in this moment. Or for her to maybe... Hold on a second. I lost track of my thoughts.
It could also be seeing her being vulnerable and seeing how weak, a man is.
So I really like the way I like the way that they did this. Going back to the moment with Steve, as because she couldn't hear it before, but now she kind of like is able to call it forward into her mind about what he was saying. Again, this is the thing where it's like they took something that they could have just done very straightforward and they made it more memorable and made it more unique.
Mm-hmm.
As a way to get these last words between them. But she's actually like remembering their last words, knowing that it's their last words. If they had just done it straight, she wouldn't have known that it was their last words. Yeah. But now, because she hears it at this moment, she knows that he's gone.
And up until this moment, she might not have realized what it means to love someone romantically. She may have loved Steve, but not realized it. And not understood what it really meant. And so now in this scene, she's embracing that love.
I think it's a reminder that, that they had those moments together. At least, and that was real. And it was good. So yeah, I think it's another thing that's sort of able to shock her back into herself again.
So here's, this is literally the power of love. Diana has tapped into the power of love, and it's stronger than Ares. And so, yeah, this is the thing where some people might say it's cheesy, but this is where Patty Jenkins, and I agree with Patty Jenkins, no, I am going to end the movie by having love be more powerful than war and hatred. And for me, I'm yeah, you do that, Patty. Go for it.
Well, Patty said that. That thing when Ares was throwing stuff at her and it was disintegrating. That was something that I never quite understood. I kind of thought that, okay, it's a bigger version of her, blast effect, I guess, protecting her. And Patty said that was literal power of love, and I'm still trying to kind of figure out what that means to me. But I always kind of thought that it's more about her motivation. I guess she's decided this is what she stands for. Sure, Ares is right. Mankind can be horrible. But, she can choose to fight for us anyways, because, she can be compassionate, she can be caring.
Mm-hmm. I like the idea that Ares is destroyed by his own violence, his own lightning is what comes back and destroys him. And I think that metaphorically that works well for violence, you live by the sword, die by the sword. Your violence will actually come back and harm you.
Now, how do we interpret that as her flying temporarily, or was that just slow motion jumping?
Debate for the ages. I finally come around to, yeah, okay, she can fly, but that's a new thing. It's not something she was ever trained to do, and it's not part of her usual fighting style.
Yeah.
It may have just been hovering. Maybe.
Yeah.
Maybe not so much flying.
Right. We never really see her
style.
going
Yes.
banking and angling left and right. It's usually a straight up and kind of a hover. Yeah.
It could have also been as a result of absorbing some of Ares' energy.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, okay.
This scene, this moment in particular in the sequence is also another reason why I think they set the sequence at night, is so that you can have this dawn scene when the war is over and Ares is defeated, and it's a lot more peaceful.
Yeah, it's beautiful. It's the sun coming up.
Oh, Edda looking very somber.
So this now Trafalgar Square, it kind of returns to the real history as we know it, where this was the real celebration after World War I. There's an American flag, I see, just went by to the left.
Oh yeah, America. We came into this war a bit late, but
We helped out, yeah.
We participated.
I wish they would have given just a little bit of more screen time to Edda here and just give her a little beat to react to Steve dying. Because earlier she said, I thought you were dead. And now he is dead, but they never really give her a moment. But, you gotta make it Diana, I guess. That's the thing.
Yeah.
But
it after she defeats Ares, it does seem like the film wraps up pretty quick. I guess they could have aired the other way and dragged everything out. So, but yeah, I too would love to see another scene with Edda.
I like that Diana's wearing blue and red, the typical Wonder Woman colors. Even in her civilian garb, she's wearing them.
She did that at the beginning of the movie too, right? I think she's wearing red right now.
Yeah.
And I like when they went into the photo, it was onto Diana, and now when they're coming out of the photo, it's Diana and Steve together, like framed equally. I like that.
Yeah, it's definitely framed a little differently.
Oh.
So now we get the narration. So BVS had Bruce Wayne narrating at the beginning and the end, and you could kind of see the bookends of his character arc, and now here Diana, similar thing. She narrated at the beginning, narrated at the end. Only love can truly save the world. Yep. I think it's nice to have a hero in the universe that really represents love and compassion like that.
Well, that's always what Wonder Woman is represented. Mm-hmm. She's always been, I mean, if you're doing something wrong, she will beat you down. But she's always been this character who has almost unreal compassion. Like, she has love even for her enemies. And as a hero, it kind of means that you can usually be assured that she's in the right, or she's trying to do what she believes is right. And what I like about this movie is it kind of goes into more detail about how she came to that point. Like, she had a moment where she doubted that. And I think that makes their convictions stronger. Like, you know, it's one thing to have superheroes talk about, you know, truth and justice and all of that, but if they question that and then still come through and believe it, that kind of strengthens that sentiment to me. It makes it seem less fake and more like something they actually thought about or struggled with.
Yeah.
And here we go, the sort of a mustard gas effect.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
And I think one of her last lines in the movie is actually pretty important, and it seems kind of subtle in this film, but it's something that has potential in the grander scheme of this extended universe. Is that darkness and light are in everyone, and it's a matter of choice. Mm-hmm. People actively have to choose which to follow. So it sort of touches on free will and how, you know, Ares was manipulating people, but ultimately it's man that has perpetuated these wars through the century that, you know, she has been in, sort of lying low. Mm-hmm. And, you know, it
was her own choices.
And it touches on, you know, the metahumans choosing to act and doing something, or choosing not to, or choosing to do something using their powers for evil, for, you know, darkness. Mm-hmm. So I think that's that one line sort of touches on something that is much bigger, and I think it was very subtle at the end there.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, there's a line in the Justice League trailer, the one that Bruce and Alfred say, where, you know, I don't recognize this world anymore, and Bruce says, don't have to recognize it, you just have to save it. So, yeah, it's you know, recognizing that the world isn't perfect, but still making a choice, still choosing to do something.
Mm-hmm.
Really cool end credits.
If I was to give a criticism about the movie, just on a personal level, I was upset with the score. Some of the music was nice, but the closing credits there, the images and the graphics were put on top of this awesome music. I think the track is called Action Reaction, I think is the track. Mm-hmm. And it's awesome. Yeah. It has these great, I think it's low brass, trombone, tuba sounds. Mm-hmm. And I thought that would have been a great musical theme for Ares. But, of course, I have no idea what the intention the composer had for that. But I was very disappointed that, in my opinion, that the best musical track of the whole movie was during the end credits. So that would be the only thing. But I really love the music there and the actual visuals that they had. I thought that was a nice way to start the credits.
Mm-hmm. Right. I think he did pretty well with Diana's stuff, and No Man's Land I think is pretty effective, but like start to finish, it's not quite, as good as like I think the BVS score is really good or Man of Steel is really good. I think he has moments where he pulled it off pretty well, but like start to finish, it wasn't perfect. And you're right, there wasn't really like an Ares theme that really stuck out strongly. There's a little bit in there, but it's not as like, memorable as the Diana theme from BVS.
I've warmed up to the score. I think the first time I saw the movie, maybe I was unfavorably comparing it to the BVS score. But after seeing the movie a few times and having listened to the soundtrack over and over again, I usually have it in the background while I'm studying. There's the Diana themes, like in No Man's Land and a few other heroic moments, I think is really beautiful, and I hope we'll hear it in future movies. I feel like a cooler Ares score would have been nice. I don't know if Action Reaction would have fit that scene, but something similarly cool would have been nice to hear.
All right. Any final thoughts? Then we can wrap it up. But anything else that's on your mind that you want to get in here before we finish?
Looking forward to Wonder Woman 2.
Yeah, that's great. That's an officially late 2019, right?
Mm-hmm.
That's cool. And we got Patty Jenkins back, so I think that'll be really exciting.
I think the pacing of the movie was really well done. Like, it was really effective. It didn't feel like there were really any lulls, or I felt like it sort of hit their points when they needed to, and it moved along at a good pace. On
the whole, Batman v Superman may take, more creative risks with the characters, but this was just a remarkably well put together film. And it appeals to a lot of different people, but I don't feel like Patty Jenkins compromised on any element of it. I think it's what she intended for it to be, and I feel like it was a strong, perfect depiction of Wonder Woman and who she is. So, I'm very happy with it.
Yeah, it's a really well-made movie, and I think it did the character and the origin of what she goes through. I think it did the character justice.
Yeah, I agree. And because this is Wonder Woman's first feature film, I think it's probably better that they played it a little bit straighter, less risky than BVS or others. And yeah, they established the character really well for her first, feature movie, where you made it clear like what she stands for, and you really can tell her as a character. She has very clear personality traits and core convictions and skills and, powers. So it's just a really good job in terms of saying like to the broader culture, here is Wonder Woman. If you didn't know her before, here's a really clear introduction of her.
It's probably a good thing this was her first movie, because there was nothing for people to compare it to, really, except for the TV show.
Right.
But there was no, feature film, and that the movies, I think, are what most people are familiar with. So I didn't feel like this movie was being unfairly compared to anything else, like Man of Steel was.
Yeah. All right. Well, thanks everybody for joining in this commentary. Thanks the listeners for spending the time with us. And we will continue our analysis at the JLU podcast. And we have a few weeks more before it becomes Justice League time. And that'll be really fun when we get to look at Justice League and continue looking at Wonder Woman. So thanks everybody. And we will see everybody online.
Woo!